It's wonderful to have you all here with us this evening. I'm Gwen Bird, and I have the privilege of being Dean of Libraries at Simon Fraser University. I want to open this evening's event by acknowledging that we're gathered on the traditional, unceded, and current shared territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. I offer this acknowledgement as a settler who works in a colonial educational institution. We know that in Canada, education has been used as an instrument of grievous harm against Indigenous people through the residential school system, and that the violent legacy of these harms carries on to the present day. As we're engaged in a process of truth and reconciliation in this country, I offer my acknowledgement this evening in that spirit. We know there can be no reconciliation without truth, and for me, there is an important link to libraries here. Libraries are the keepers of stories, so we have a role in that truth-telling. We have a part in choosing what stories to keep, which to tell, which voices to feature, and to give the imprint of institutional validity, for example, by including them in our collections, and by deciding what formats even count as literature. I'm grateful to work at SFU with a group of colleagues who are as thoughtful about this aspect of our work. Now I'm going to talk about One Book One SFU. This program began in 2015 as a common reading experience at SFU that is committed to the idea that libraries have a role in fostering ideas, promoting books and reading, and facilitating dialogue toward a more just society. Each year, we select a book and make copies available to the university community through the libraries on each campus. And then we bring together this university-wide reading experience with a free public event featuring the author. This year, as you know, we're very excited to be discussing the fantastic book Son of Elsewhere, by a memoir in pieces by Elamin Abdelmahmoud. So we'll begin this evening with a short reading from Son of Elsewhere, followed by a conversation between Elamin and acclaimed author Jen Sookfong Lee. Please note that we won't have an audience Q&A this evening, but you can bring your questions to our post-event book signing and reception. We hope you will join us after the event for a reception. For the reception and book signing, you're invited to stay for conversation and light refreshments, and you will be able to purchase copies of Jen and Elamin's books from our friends at Pulp Fiction Books. I also want to extend my thanks to Penguin Random House, who have generously supported the post-event reception. I want to mention that this event is being recorded this evening, and we also have a photographer with us. If you would prefer not to be included in any photos, please let a member of our staff know. I do want to extend thanks to our event partners for making this evening possible: SFU's Van City Office of Community Engagement, SFU Black Caucus, and Pulp Fiction Books, a local independent bookstore. And thanks to all of you for coming this evening. We'd especially like to extend a warm welcome to the participants of the Women's Leadership and Development Programs with Pacific Immigrant Resources Society who have joined us this evening. We're so happy to have you here. And now I'd like to introduce our speakers before turning the conversation over to them. Jen Sookfong Lee's list of books include a recent poetry collection, The Shadow List, as well as the acclaimed novels of the Chinatown trilogy. The final book in the trilogy, The Conjoined, was nominated for the International Dublin Literary Award. Jen is also the author of several books for children, including the middle grade nonfiction book, Finding Home, The Journey of Immigrants and Refugees. Her most recent book, Superfan, is a memoir and essays that explores her ongoing relationship with pop culture, touching on grief and loss, intergenerational conflict, and of course, the Kardashians. Jen was an instructor at SFU Writers Studio for 6 years and has been a familiar voice on CBC Radio. She currently acquires and edits for ECW Press and co-hosts the literary podcast Can't Lit. Elamin Abdelmahmoud is the author of this year's One Book One SFU selection, Son of Elsewhere. Published in 2022, Son of Elsewhere is already a national bestseller and a New York Times Notable Book of the Year. Just a few days ago, it was announced as one of the finalists for the Evergreen Award from the Ontario Library Association. Elamin is a culture writer for BuzzFeed News, and his work has appeared in Rolling Stone and the Globe and Mail, among other publications. We are also very familiar with his voice on the radio. He was a founding co-host of the CBC Politics podcast Party Lines, and until recently, the host of CBC's pop culture show Pop Chat. I'm a huge fan. Pop Chat. Yeah. His new show on CBC Radio, Commotion, will launch on Monday. It is described as a daily 30-minute romp through the news and events that are driving discussion in the arts, so please tune in. Now, I'm pleased to invite Elamin to the podium to share a reading from our One Book One SFU selection, Son of Elsewhere.
Hello, thank you for being here. I'm deeply honored that this book was chosen by SFU. I'm also just gotta say, when you hear your new show described as a romp, like a whole feeling goes through your body. I'm like, did I write that? Did I say it was gonna be a romp? What is a romp? Anyway, it's gonna be great. Please tune into Commotion on Monday. I'm gonna stop talking about it now. I have been deeply honored by the journey that this book has taken. It's a weirdly solitary process, sort of dragging your feet, in my case, to my standing desk. I'm one of those people who write in early mornings, but also late evenings. I'm a night owl and a morning person, and I hate myself for it, but it's fine. And when I'm writing things that were just going in the Google Doc, it was like, this is fine, this is just between me and me. I was like, this is fine, it's between me and my editor and nobody else. And then now, we're like 8-9 months into the journey of this book, and people keep bringing up facts that I wrote in the book, and they say, hey, I know this about you. And my first instinct is always to say, how do you know that? So I'm still getting used to this process. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna read the first and last bits of Son of Elsewhere. There are two pieces called, both of them called Elsewhere. I am a student of migration stories. I'm pulled towards accounts of lives rearranged by the journey from one place to another. If you tell me you are an immigrant or a child of immigrants, we're gonna spend some time together because I will want to hear of the ways you've had to stretch yourself to find your footing. Your story might include yearning for a home you haven't seen in some time, if ever. It might also feature the hard work of adjusting to new expectations. But neither the yearning nor the adjusting are the point. Instead, I'm interested in the constant calculus of how much of yourself to allot to each homeland, and how you navigate the anguish that comes with giving one of them less. This is Elsewhere. Elsewhere is the sharp contrast between the here and the there. Elsewhere is when you are compelled to note the differences in weather and temperament and attitude and air between a once home and a now home, just because you walked past burning incense that reminded you of another world. Elsewhere is not a vast land, but rather a sharp edge you inhabit. Its identity as volcano. Elsewhere is the hot, frothing outcome of two tectonic plates constantly crashing into each other. There's violence in this, two lands trying to outdo one another, but in the fissure there is also order. There are earthquakes and tremors, but frequently there is a brief truce, fragile compromise. When neither is raging for attention, you might find yourself teetering, but steady. Perhaps even recognizing the patterns of your sway. Perhaps you pitch a tent in the dislocation. Perhaps you begin to recognize, then eventually categorize, what triggers feelings of insufficiency. Perhaps you take Hindi classes at night, or have a tattoo of a word you can't say in a language you can't speak. Elsewhere is an orientation, an emotional frequency, a chaotic compass that waits until you take a step in one direction, then immediately points in the direction behind you. than at the end. There is no greater symphony of accommodation than a mosque in the West right after Eid prayers. It is a collection of greetings making room for one another. The custom is to greet strangers and friends alike and celebrate a holy day, but in each mosque, these greetings are carried out in different ways. There are cultures, Pakistan, Bangladesh, that do the triple hug, right, left, then right again. Other cultures, Syria, Iraq, that do a handshake and a double cheek kiss, not to be confused with the cultures like Egypt that don't do a handshake but do a triple cheek kiss, right, left, then right again. Some, Sudan, do a left shoulder touch, then a handshake, while others suffice with a hand to the heart. The brave try to guess which kind of greeting is coming to them. It's fucked up, man. And wholeheartedly meet the greeting person there. The bold say, you know what? This is how we do it in my culture. And they take the lead. The meek, I'm proudly among them, stand still and let the hugs and kisses and shoulder touches land where they may. On Eid morning, it's easy to imagine another context, each greeting in its own birthplace. There, everyone does a triple hug or the handshake, double cheek kiss combo, not just on Eid, but for the many little celebrations of life, perhaps an engagement gathering or a graduation party. It's easy to imagine how the performer of each greeting would have suspended using it in the everyday. Perhaps they stopped all at once, opting instead for the Western handshake or a hug. Perhaps they gave it up slowly. Maybe they did it back when they arrived at the airport, but gradually it faded from regular life. But on Eid morning, without fail, the mosque is filled with people who card out their traditional hugs and kisses rituals, insisting on giving them air. On their faces, you see relief and remembrance, a look that says, this is how I say hello. From time to time, I want to correct names that are not mine to correct. I will hear a person introduce themselves with a name that is a word I know to be Arabic, but is being pronounced incorrectly. In these moments, it is all I can do not to blurt out a clarification. What I want to say is, look, the way it's been anglicized for you is wrong. Or, look, the way you say ha, but your name contains a ha. It's a letter that requires more from you. It requires that you force air from your throat, then stop midway through your windpipe. Here, let me teach you. Instead, I say, nice to meet you. Instead, I say, what a beautiful name. Is that Arabic? But when I do this, what I'm trying to say is, in the very way you introduce yourself, there is a conflict. There is a distance between the real word and how you say it. I stop myself because I know this distance is treacherous terrain. I wonder if they know the word, but they say it differently, wrongly, so as to avoid having to deliver a phonetics lesson when they just want a coffee. Or perhaps it was their parents who passed on this pronunciation, having given up on the attempts to teach the proper ha in between managing night shifts and language classes. Or what if the speaker has gone by an entirely different name, say Stan, and this mangled word is a bridge back to a name they'd like to reclaim. Whatever the reason may be, their name is not mine to correct. You don't go into people's homes and tell them their framed photos are hanging crooked. It's better to admire what they've chosen to put up. My daughter is 4. On occasion, out of the blue, her eyes will light up and she says, Baba, tell me about Sudan. I tell her about the dusty, unfinished roads I grew up on and the bus I took to school. I tell her about my cousins, all 1 million of them. I tell her that they all know her name, that they all ask about her all the time. On my phone, I scroll through pictures of family members and tell her a story about each one. And as we do this, she listens intently. She asks questions like, don't they miss you? Yes, they do, and I miss them all very much. When you moved to Canada, did they cry? They did, and I did too. When I finish, she has one last question. Why do they know who I am? We've never met. At the risk of over-ascribing intention to a 4-year-old's questions, her aim seems clear to me. She's trying to figure out just how much room in her life she has to make for the part of her history that's from another place. It is the birth of her very own elsewhere, a nebula of negotiation, gathering a gravitational pull. Elsewhere is a volcano, but it is one you walk into willingly. Elsewhere is a choice, and can only be a choice. You must care enough to bear the weight of the heaviness to which your heart is tethered. This is to say, you have agency in shifting your gaze from a once home to a now home, Elsewhere is for the middle children of diaspora, those of us who have definitely left but haven't exactly arrived. You have to let yourself be reminded that a part of you is rooted in another place. Face what is missing, the empty crevices that once contained what you now lack. An old way of greeting, a pronunciation of your name that is at best an approximation of the real thing. And say thank you, for it is because of this deficit that you know yourself. Elsewhere is a conscious choice to remain in the incomplete. Your elsewhere is like no one else's, but it's the same in its fragile liminality. We live on a suspension bridge, and some days are windier than others. Thank you.
Thank you. That was so good. I gave you finger guns.
Hey,
Yay.
thank you.
I want to talk. Is
Yes.
that good? It's okay.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah, you can. Okay, we're good.
As we were saying earlier, Elamin sounds majestic into this microphone in this room.
It's true.
Yeah.
Like Mufasa. No.
Oh
not-
my
Not
God.
quite. I know, not quite.
No,
But,
no.
yeah.
I want to tell you something that I really love about Son of Elsewhere. And I think what you do so beautifully is you write this sense of longing, especially when you're writing about Sudan, but also about looking for a space that feels like it belongs to you. And there is a question in that. But do you feel...
I'll just take the compliment.
Oh,
man.
you can
Thank
just take the
That's very- That's really
compliment.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, the question is, when you were writing it and now that it's been out in the world, do you feel like Son of Elsewhere sort of bridges that sense of belonging or hybridity that I think people often associate with immigrant families or individuals?
I think one thing that's been really gratifying about the response to the book has been people saying, oh, we can't fix this. Like, it's not, there's no fix for this. There's no healing this. And actually, it's okay to sort of look the wound kind of directly in the face, or like look the feeling of this thing is missing from my life directly in the face. That's been comforting to me because like that's the place I'm trying to get to. I'm not good at that. I'm not good at, sort of negotiating this in-between space. But part of why I wanted to write this book is to try to sort of give this in-between space its own shape and say, it's okay to live here. It's okay to sort of own this, as opposed to constantly kind of feel torn. It's like, this is actually is your normal. And I've been comforted by how many other people have said, you know what? I want that too.
Do you think it's easy to exist in that space for anyone, though? Like, I don't think it's just you know what I mean?
No, not at all. That's exactly it. It's like,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have been maybe trying to define this in-between space as something that you want to run away from and find an answer, find some kind of space that says, you know what, I feel more Canadian, or I want to go back to where I came from. But I like sort of culturally and conceptually, want to go back to where I came from and not feel this anguish of the push and pull.
Yeah.
But to me, there's something kind of lovely in living in the push and pull and embracing it and be like, this kind of hurts all the time.
Well, it hurts because you miss something that's really important, right? And that's not
exactly.
like a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing. And you
No.
become aware of that.
Yeah. One of the things, like, as you're talking, I'm thinking about how you write this book with so much generosity. And even when you're talking to me now, you're always casting your net further afield to include people in, the things that you're writing about. The generosity in this book is so fascinating to me, especially when you're writing about, like, your father. You give him so much empathy and so much space for him to be who he is in this book. Was that something that you really had to think about? Like, because it's easy to be angry at your parents. I mean, who among us? I mean, once I took off my glasses and threw them at my mom. Like, it's a true story. It didn't hurt her.
I was going to say, did it hit her?
No, my glasses are plastic. They're featherweight.
She's fine. Yeah.
But yeah, like, did you have to really consciously think about that? Or are you one of those people who literally walks through life like just being like generous about your parents and other people all the time?
How do I put this? One of the first things that I said to my editor when we started working on this is there's a version of this book I can write while my parents are alive, and there's a version I can write after they're not here. Yeah. And they are not the same book. They don't read like the same book. There are stories that don't have any space in this book because my parents are alive, And it's funny that you say that was a particularly, you sort of read it as a generous thing, because I felt so uncomfortable about it, even putting these stories that are in here. And I think there are more stories that were maybe less charitable to both of them, and I think because they're alive, I wanted to sort of extend them the grace of saying, you don't need this. Like, you don't need people sort of thinking about you as bad people. But one of the really important things to me was to kind of trace some kind of redemption arc for both of them, for both of my parents, to say, we were in this really difficult spot, and then we made it to somewhere that I think is more beautiful, where we're reaching towards one another. I think if we hadn't gone to that place, it would have been harder to write this book, because it's like, it would be sort of, here's this thing that's not concluded. We are still sort of openly, at odds with one another, and that would have been a much harder place for me to start writing this book.
Did they read it?
I don't know.
Oh, silence.
But here's the thing. Not only do I not know whether my parents have read it or not, I don't want to know. And I think a part of that is that, like, it's my act of generosity towards them, if we're going to call it that, is being like, I'm going to be real selective about some of the stories that I share. But as a result, if you have some thoughts, some disagreements about some of the stories I made it in, I don't want to hear it. And so, as a result, I haven't really, like, gotten into it with them, but whether they've read it or not, I think my dad has read it. I don't think my mom has read it, but I genuinely don't know, and I will never ask.
Yeah, don't ask them.
Yeah.
It's better to live in uncertainty.
That is exactly correct. Yeah.
I was
don't wanna
actually, one of my favorite scenes in the book is actually features your mother. You're like 15 years old, you're at your first, like, I think it's a heavy metal concert.
Hell yeah,
and
it
she
is.
goes with you, and she stands to the side while you're in the mosh pit with snacks.
She has a cookie for me.
And I just can't with that. Like, that is, like, so good. But, you know, when I was reading it, it felt to me like, when you think about heavy metal concerts with a bunch of, like, sweaty teenagers, you do not think of someone's mom, particularly like an immigrant BIPOC mom, standing at the side with cookies.
Quiet Sudanese woman, just like, I have cookies. Does anyone want these cookies? Yeah.
I feel like all these kids might need a cookie. And it's an interesting thing where, and this is something I think about a lot, where we think about pop culture and these sort of, like, mass, really popular things, and we don't often see people engaging in it in a way that's very specific to who they are. And I felt a lot of this book was that. Yeah, so was this something like you were, this is something that's important to you, I feel.
I mean, I have to say that that concert changed my relationship with my mom in very interesting ways, in the sense that before that, she had no interest in the things I was interested in. But then regularly, every year, she'll just, like, randomly be like, how's David doing? And she means David Draymond, lead singer of Disturbed, the metal band, whom I don't know personally. But my mom is, like, convinced that because I'm into this thing, because, like, in Sudan, she sort of had pretty good relationships with most of, like, the big singers. Like, they would, like, often, like, drop by the house. And so that was just, like, the world that she existed in. So she just assumed that I'd created a similar world here, where, like, I don't know, Beyonce drops by every once in a while. She does not. And so,
Imagine. You'd have to pay like $24 million.
Exactly. My good friend Beyonce. Yeah, here's $24 million, Beyonce. And so I found that I keep returning to that moment. And, like, my mom, honestly, every year will just be like, hey, how's David doing? And I'm like, I couldn't tell you. But it was important for me to put that moment there, because that was my mom stretching herself in ways that I didn't.
So much, actually.
So much so.
Yeah.
And at the time, I could only interpret it as a restriction, right? At the time, I could only interpret it as, all right, you can go, but I have to be there with you to watch over what you do. And then it's only so many years later, they're like, oh my God, you put yourself in the most uncomfortable place of, like, it was like a quadruple bill of new metal bands. And, like, for people who don't know what new metal is, first of all, thank your lucky stars. And second of all, it's like this weird period of music from, like, 1999 to, like, 2003. No one remembers it well, right? It's like Limp Bizkit and Korn and, like, those bands.
Korn with a K.
Korn
right?
with a K.
Yeah.
That's right. Thank you for clarifying this.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, like, that's the stuff that I wanted to listen to. And it must have made my mom so uncomfortable to be there.
Does she ever say how she felt?
No, she just asks how David is. She does.
Bless her heart, though.
I know.
Okay. Do you think, okay, so one of the things we were joking about earlier, the cover in your book, how like people will pick it up because they just like to drive. Like there's a highway.
driving book?
It's a highway.
Yeah.
And the highway in your book is a real motif, shows up. And there's this idea of destinations and getting to go somewhere. So how important is the act of getting in a car or a train, or well, I guess not a train, or a bus, and getting on a highway and that sort of like destination of possibility? Is it like, how important is that to you, just in general?
Deeply important. I do most of my thinking in that space, most of my feeling in that space. And so a fun lie about this book is that you sort of read 5 different essays about the Highway 401 as you're going through the book, but they were all written at the same time. It's just one essay that's just been divided up 5 different times. And it was, when I kind of came down, when I sat down, I wanted to write an essay about my parents. I knew that the highway would be one of the structuring ideas because first moved to Canada, and I have these like really vivid memories of being in the car with my dad as we're driving back to Kingston. And then there's all these like trips back and forth, after I moved to Toronto, and that so much of that space has to do with like repairing our relationship and just driving to them and feeling like I'm really anxious about it and driving away from them. And I was like, that didn't go as well as I wanted it to. And I keep thinking about my parents and our relationship on the highway. And so after I wrote that essay, it was I think it was like 14,000 words when it was done. And I, being a coward, decided that it's too confrontational to ask someone to read one 14,000 word essay right at the start of the book. It just feels like a rude thing for me to do, you know? And so we started sort of experimenting with whether we can play around with it, whether we can just like divide it up into pieces. And first, divided up into 2 pieces. It was like 7,000 words at the start, 7,000 words at the end, and that wasn't quite working. And then made these like little cuts of like about 2,500 words in each, and it ended up lining up very kind of beautifully with the rest of the book and like the ways that the other essays kind of like. I think to me the highway essays are like a nice little time break to be like, this is roughly where we are in the time of Elamin's life in this moment, and it worked out nicely, but it could have been a disaster. So I'm glad that it worked out okay.
Well, I liked it.
Thanks, pal.
And I'm just, oh, you're welcome. And for me anyway, like when I was reading it, is that symbolism of highways being transitional spaces, right? And that so when you're dealing with say cultural fluidity or fluency, that transitional space is actually really important to like gather your thoughts, right? Actually, my therapist just told me, literally yesterday, that a lot of people do their best communicating in the car when they're not looking at each other. So I think it's like, see, there you go.
That totally adds up.
Yeah.
Because you just don't feel the pressure of like this thing. Do you want to just do the rest of this interview like this? Does that feel better to you?
Don't make me stop this car, Elamin. Did you listen to Life is a Highway by Tom Cochrane while you were writing it, though?
Of course I did. Yeah, as you should.
You did, right?
Well,
I could hear it, I swear.
It's one of the many great highway songs. Yeah.
Did you know I quoted Life is a Highway by Tom Cochrane in my high school graduation yearbook write-up? And a teacher edited it out. Too spicy.
What part of Life is a
I
Highway?
don't know.
There's no part of anything that Tom Cochrane's ever written
That is spicy.
that is that spicy.
I don't think he's a spicy person.
Big Leagues, maybe? Do you know Big Leagues by Tom
My
Cochrane?
boy's gonna play in the big leagues. Yeah, it's a great song.
I just could listen to you sing it for the rest of the night.
No, you do not want that. Okay, so people ask me this question all the time. Are there parts of your life that you were like, no, I am never writing about?
Never writing about? No. I
And
don't
what
think
are
so.
they? No, I'm kidding.
Reveal them. No, I don't think so. I don't think I have that. I do have a thing about writing about something that happened too recently. I don't think I can do that. I don't think I have enough perspective on it. I think the most recent thing in the book, with the exception of like a couple mentions of my daughter, the most recent thing in the book is like 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Because I think you need a bit of time, a bit of space to remember and then re-remember and then reinterpret. I think we're always reinterpreting our memory. So you can't always like trust your first interpretation of an event. And so I try to avoid writing about anything that happened too recently. But aside from that, like, there's nothing off limits. It's just, hey, have I done enough processing of this, and has it like congealed in a way that I can make sense of, or do I trust this interpretation or not?
Do you feel like if you're signed up to write a memoir, you had best tell it as honestly and fully as you can?
I think honesty is not owed to the person that is reading it. I think honesty with yourself is owed, right? Like, are there parts of this book that, how do I put this? Am I a coward for leaving certain stories out? I think so.
No.
I do. I think there's an element of this.
I disagree.
But that's fine. We'll get into it. But the reason I think I'm a coward is because if this is a commercial product that is meant to go out in the world and has a work to do, which is to say, someone's going to be like, I'm going to pay $32 and I'm going to get Elamin's entire life. Then you're owed those little crevices of my life, right? Like that's sort of what is promised. But I sort of try to make a little bit of space for saying, but I'm also trying to preserve some relationships. There are writers who are very comfortable with burning as many relationships as possible in the name of being like, I wrote it all down. Every little bit of the truth is in this book. I'm not one of those people. And I think I'm always going to be comfortable not being one of those people. It's just like not I'm not very good at being mad at people. I'm not very good at being like, you know what? I did this because I felt like it. It just doesn't come naturally to me. What about you? What do you think?
I think that you choose your parts of your life that you're going to write about, but if you choose that part, you have to do it as fully and honestly as you can. And you choose your spots. You're not going to write about everything, right? And nor should you, because, I mean, there's a very long passage in my book where I write about that one time I had dental surgery, and, like, I still don't know why it's there. Like, why did I think that was a fun time?
It's fantastic.
Well, thank you. I got a crown replaced. But, like, you know, what I wanted to say, though, is that you write about the beginnings of your relationship with your wife, Emily, right, in the book. And you write that so well. Like, I fell in love with her. She's
pretty great.
Was she happy with it?
Yeah, she was absolutely happy with it. I think there was a bit of question of, I try to be pretty protective about our relationship, just because I'm like, I don't know if this is like a thing that is for public consumption. That feels kind of weird to me. But also, you have to balance that with, like, this is also a really significant part of my life. Also, side note, we were sitting here, and I noticed for the first time that in this headshot, I don't have a wedding ring. And so I have to, like, after I get off the stage, like, message my wife and be like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. I don't know what happened. But anyway, it's important to me that I sort of capture, if I'm going to do it, as you said, if I'm going to go into this relationship, to sort of, like, attempt to capture the magic of it. But I feel very wary. I feel very sort of like, I don't know how much detail I should get into with this, because it feels like it's one of those things that is mine, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, are there parts of your life where you're like, I will never write about this because it's just your thing. Mm-hmm. Or I'll never share anything about on social media about this thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Like what? Do you want to talk about it?
Well, like my son's face.
Okay.
For example.
Yeah.
That's an easy one.
That's an easy one.
That's an easy one. There's lots of things I don't, you know, it's funny, like, with Superfan, people will say to me, was your mother really that, like, you know, difficult or challenging? And I'm like, actually, she's about 40% worse than I wrote. And everyone's like, no. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, but she's very sweet now. She loves all her grandkids, and she just gives them $50 bills. She doesn't have that much money, but she just gives them $50 bills, and she gets, like, discount candy, like, you know, the day after Halloween. And then she gives them out to them all year.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
I'm going to borrow that.
Yeah, you could. Yeah. And
that's the kind of grandfather I'm going to be.
She buys, like, weird off-brand Pringles. Like, they're not Pringles, but they're, like, they've got, like, a purple monster on it. It looks like Grimace. And I'm like, what are these?
She sounds amazing. Yeah. I hear that account and I go, I will never believe she's 40% worse than, you know, what you wrote.
No, she's good now. Yeah. She had a moment. Will you let your daughter read this book if she wants to?
I think so. Yeah, I don't think there's anything in this book where I go like, I hope you never find out about this. I'm now going through like, is there anything? No, I don't think so. I don't think there's anything in this book that makes me feel apprehensive about that. I she's not curious about it, but also she's 6 years old. So when she gets to a period of time when she wants to read about it, I'm more than willing to, yeah.
It'll come. Yeah, and then you have to really decide what you're going to do with that.
Well, you wrote some intense novels for your son to read.
Yeah, with like dead bodies in it.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, how are you feeling about that?
I mean, I feel like the dead bodies are okay.
He's 12, he can handle it.
He's 12. He's watched worse. I mean, please. He watched Squid Game and It's fine. He's fine. So for in my family, right, the profession of author was not on my mom's short list for preferred professions. And I generally...
How short was the list?
The preferred professions, okay, for my mom, she wanted me to be Miss Chinatown Vancouver, the beauty pageant. She also wanted me to be a pharmacist. And like that was it. That was like the two. Otherwise,
that's a list of one, yeah.
Yeah, she's still trying to set me up with her dentist. Like, true story. But like, typically I think that creative professions not being on shortlist for immigrant parents in general. So your life is quite creative. What did your parents think of your choice of job in general?
Well, I sold it to them through a bouquet of lies.
Same!
Yeah, it's not, this was not the intention. So I think at first I was like, I'm gonna go to university, I will study philosophy, and then I will go to law school. And they were like, great, perfect plan. No one hates a lawyer. Not true. But they were very on board with this idea of law school.
It's because any immigrant child who's not good at math must be going to law school.
Those are the options. It's like, take this path or this path. Those are the doors. And then I switched majors, and I was like, I don't want to study philosophy anymore. I want to study gender studies. And they were like, we don't know what that is, but be a lawyer after that. I was like, great, got it. And then I took the LSAT, and law schools were like, no, thank you. And I don't blame them, to be honest with you. And I said, okay, law school, not an option anymore, but I'm going to apply to public policy schools. And they were like, we know what government is, so yeah, let's go with this. But I said, I'll apply next year. I'm going to work in media for a year, and then I'll apply to public policy schools. And I really did apply to public policy schools. I applied to 7 public policy schools, and I got 7 no thank yous from all of them. And at that point, I was like, I think I'm going to do this with my career. And they're like, we don't like it, but okay. And mercifully, they don't say that now, but mostly it's because they sometimes see me on TV. Like, that's the only...
Yeah, that's a big deal.
That's it. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's the TV thing does it. Like, everything else is fine for them, but it's like, well, as long as we see you on TV every once in a while, it's fine. This is a career we're going to explain to people, basically. That's how they... I think that's how they sort of relate to it.
Elamin's on TV. He looks good. He looks like he's having a good time, or maybe more specifically, looks like he's getting paid at least.
My mom calls me after every single TV appearance, and she says, you look like you're not getting enough sleep.
That's very sweet.
It started cute, but then you're like, oh, I don't know, is it? I'm like, Mom, they're just my eyes. Like, what do you want? You know, like the makeup person wasn't there that day. I don't, but it's fine.
Yeah, my mom is always like, you're not sitting up straight and too much boob. It's always...
Those are the notes?
Yeah, literally, my first author photo, which is many years ago, I was in my 20s, and she's like, why the boob? I'm like, there's no boob. Like, I'm a small person. I do not... Anyway, that's a lot. Sorry, guys. Do you want to play a game?
I'd love to play a game.
There are no losers in this game.
I don't know about this.
So I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and every answer has to be the title of a song. Hopefully one that we know.
Okay.
No wrong answers, truly.
No wrong answers.
Okay. And you'll see. If you were stuck on a desert island, what is the one song you could bear playing on a loop the entire time? Just one.
Long as I Can See the Light by CCR.
Really?
Yeah. Song goes. That song fucking goes.
Sing a line for us.
There's no way I'm singing. There's zero chances. But I go through moments with songs. So like I go through moments where I'm like, this is a song. This is the only song that's ever been written. I don't want to hear about any other song.
Right.
My favorite song of all time is I Shall Be Released by Bob Dylan. But I have a problem, okay? We're going to talk about it, Vancouver. My problem is every single song that I like, I have to download every version that exists of that song. So if you check my phone, like you will literally see that there's 12 different versions of I Shall Be Released by Bob Dylan.
That's pathological.
But I agree with you, but I can't stop myself. Best version of I Shall Be Released, by the way, Chrissy Hind. You're welcome. Anyway, yeah.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
What is the song that whenever you hear it on the radio, you have to turn off? Not up, off.
Off.
Like, oh my God, I can't.
I don't have that.
No.
I'm not very good at hating things. I'm really not. Like, I don't.
You need to hang out with me more if you want to, like, start to learn how to hate
What's
things.
the song that you would turn off the radio for?
Oh, I turn up Gwen Stefani songs now. Every single one.
Yeah, but that's not because of
That's
like,
a political
I was
choice.
gonna say that has nothing to do with the song.
Yeah, I really loathe Shake It Off by Taylor Swift.
No way.
I don't hate all Taylor Swift
I
songs.
have to leave the stage. Shake It Off?
Some of her songs are fine. I just don't like that.
Some of her songs are fine. The rest of the conversation is about this, by the way. You will leave the stage a Swiftie, I promise you. You're entitled to your opinion. Shake It Off, really?
It's annoying.
Yeah, if you hate joy.
Shake It Up. It's not joy. It's toxic positivity. That's the problem with that song.
It's literally an anti-hater song.
No, you can just shake it off and then dance and you'll be fine. No, you're not fine. Microaggressions are not easily shaken off, Taylor.
Works for me. I don't know. I just put on frilly dresses and then I dance off the microaggressions. You should try it.
Yeah, it's fine. And then she just goes and hangs out with Gigi Hadid and she's fine. But that's her.
She doesn't do that anymore. She's different now. We don't need to make this whole conversation about Taylor Swift. There are lots of people that you can talk to about Taylor Swift and be like, oh, what a passing reference. Not this guy.
Okay, but wait.
We will steep
How is she
ourselves in
different?
this.
How is she? She doesn't have the squad anymore? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, there was a period of time, an era that she looks back. Oh, you guys don't want to get into this, but she even looks back at that and she goes like, oh, I kind of cringe at the fact that this is, this is how I was seen because this was like not what she was trying to do. And she was going through this whole eating disorder at the time and like the idea that she was associated with you don't want to get into this. Don't get involved, okay?
No.
If you bring up Taylor Swift with me, the rest of the conversation is literally about this. But wow, you went there.
Okay, I did go there, and now I feel so much shame.
But also, the rest of the answers is just going to be Taylor Swift, by the way.
No, you're not. I don't hate her. I just don't like that song. Okay, what song do you think upset your parents the most when you listened to it as a teen?
Down with the Sickness by Disturbed. It begins with this guttural scream that I'm not going to do for you as much as I'm tempted to. But also, the bridge of the song, I swear to God, the bridge of the song is David Draymond, my mom's friend, narrating in like really graphic detail how his mother is hitting him, and then in the middle of the bridge, he turns it around and then he kills her at the end of the bridge. And we called this music. We said, we want to pay money for this. And so I'd say that song. Like when my parents heard it, they were like, what's happening here? And why do we do this? That and also the next episode by Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg.
Okay.
Just because they're like, this song is literally telling you, like at the end, it just goes, smoke weed every day. And they were like, not this, not for our son, which is fine. Yeah.
Okay, just quickly, mine was Nothing Compares to You by Sinead O'Connor.
Your parents didn't like Nothing Compares to You?
I heard her on the phone. She's like, she keeps listening to that song. She's talking to one of her friends. I think she's really depressed. Like she was like, I'm so worried. And I'm like, Nothing Compares to You.
I mean, it's quite a sadness to live in. So.
It's sad. What is the song that you and your wife vehemently disagree on?
I would say my wife is much more of like a more passive music person. Like music sort of happens around her, and she's like, no, this is fine. But about 7 years ago, your boy got into country music, and like big time. I'm a huge country music person, and my wife's protestations have basically began at, I didn't sign up for this, and which is fair.
That's what I would say.
This was not as advertised. To now, like, she'll be at a restaurant and a country song will come on. She'll just start singing it. I'd be like, victory is mine. Except this song by Zac Brown Band. And the song is called Chicken Fried. Yeah, I agree.
Oh, people know this? I do not know this.
Yeah. Well, so Chicken Fried is a song about chicken fried chicken, naturally. However, it has this very strange bridge, again with these bridges, but the bridge of the song is a salute to the military, U.S. military, for defending freedoms such as chicken fried chicken. And this drives my wife up the wall. Like, we get to that part, she's like, what the hell is happening in this song? And in fairness to her, she's not wrong about that. She's just wrong with the fact that the song is an absolute banger, an all-timer, if you will. So Chicken Fried by Zac Brown Band. If you don't know it, I highly encourage you to listen to it. Tweet me what you think, and if you're mad at me, I'm sorry.
I mean, she'll listen to, like, say, Jesus Takes the Wheel, but not that.
Jesus Takes the Wheel is an absolute all-timer also. Yeah, she's fine with that.
Okay.
Oh, do you turn off the radio for Jesus Take the Wheel?
I don't ever play a station that would have Jesus Takes the Wheel. I'm going to be honest.
Carrie Underwood, controversial opinion. Carrie Underwood.
She's controversial, Carrie Underwood.
She's also the greatest American Idol of all time.
Other than Kelly Clarkson?
Someone gasped?
Because Kelly Clarkson!
Did someone just gasp?
Jennifer Hudson!
Jennifer Hudson is not an American Idol winner, I don't think.
No, she was like a
Third?
top 5 or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, if we're going to throw around non-winners, Chris Daughtry? No.
Clay Aiken?
Yeah, exactly right. But here's the thing. Carrie Underwood, greatest selling American Idol of all time.
She sells better than Kelly Clarkson?
Way more.
No.
Way more.
Really?
Yeah. Huh. It's my least defensible opinion, I think, but I defend it all the same.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. What song always makes you want to dance?
Shake It Off by Taylor Swift.
I asked for that.
Yeah, it felt like the
I
right
set
one.
you up for that.
I'll tell you this though. We were talking about this earlier. The song that I play before every single radio show that I ever do, every single podcast recording that I ever do, is "Walking on Broken Glass" by Annie Lennox. It's sort of my yes. It's my pump up song, and the reason. Yeah, no, please.
No.
Let's go. I'm ready. The reason it's my pump up song is because people think a pump up song should get you to 10. You don't want that. You'll be exhausted. You want a pump up song that gets you to like 8, and then you get yourself the rest of the way there. Like you got to put in some effort, And so the next time that you're getting ready to go out, I don't know, wherever you want to go, try Walking on Broken Glass. That song has an arc. It really just explodes at the end. That's what you want.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
Do you remember your high school graduation song?
High school graduation song. No, but that was the year I was really into Green Day. So I'll say Boulevard of Broken Dreams is my guess.
By Green Day?
By Green Day.
Okay.
Yeah. My grade 8 yearbook, I'll
Yes.
tell you, this has a little spot for favorite song. And my answer, sincerely, was S Club 7.
Sorry, I did not expect that.
That's a reasonable response.
Club.
But it would have been defensible. It would have been defensible if it's even that song. But it
Song
was
was it?
"I Never Had a Dream Come True" by S Club 7.
I don't remember that one.
Neither does anyone else. But I remember every word.
Did you watch the show?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, same.
Religiously.
I'm way too old to have watched that show. I was like probably very close to being an adult. Like I was probably 18 or 19 years old.
You were their ages.
Yeah, I know, but it was for children. The show was like for children.
It was for me.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Okay, what song would you choose to close out the credits at the end of your very own biopic, Elamin, the movie?
Well, where is it ending?
That's up to you, sir.
Like, is it ending now, or is it ending after I'm dead?
I mean, if it's a biopic, it probably ends after you're dead.
Fuck.
In like traditional style.
Long Time Running by the Tragically Hip.
I was gonna say that.
Yeah, that's the choice.
Yeah, that's
the choice.
Yeah. See, we agree on that, but not Shake It Off by Taylor Swift.
Listen, We'll do our best. We'll bring you there. By the end of the night, you're gonna be a Swiftie, I promise.
Oh, Lord,
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, that was my last question for you because I think we are at the end of our time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. What a delight.
Thank you for doing this,
Well, it was
especially like
lovely.
in the middle of a week when your book just came out. Do you want to talk about your book for a minute?
No, it's okay.
I think you should. Because Jen wrote an amazing book. It's called Superfan, How Pop Culture Broke My Heart. It is out literally right now. You should go get it. Forget my book. My book is last year's news. Jen, though, that's the new. You should get it.
That's
It's
very
beautiful.
sweet of you.
Yeah.
I'm very embarrassed now.
That's a good note to leave it on.
Thank you both so much. That was an incredible conversation. It should be no surprise, I think, to any of us that it took that musical detour, and that was fantastic. I loved the little Taylor Swift piece in the conversation. Thank you, Jen, for asking about the mosh pit scene in the book, also one of my personal favorites. Thank you for the reflective and lively conversation about Son of Elsewhere and all the other places you went. Some of the intricacies of memoir that you touched on, I think, will really resonate with everyone here who enjoyed the book along with us. I want to thank again our event partners, SFU's Van City Office of Community Engagement, the SFU Black Caucus, and Pulp Fiction Books. And you are all warmly invited to join us for the book signing and reception. And Superfan will be on sale, I understand, as well as Son of Elsewhere and other books. As you exit through the back of the cinema, you can go down one flight of stairs and follow the hallway, and there are ushers who will help lead you to the room where the reception is happening. So please do stay and join us. And one more round of applause for our fantastic